Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Metaphysical Egypt. This is the third part of our series on the ancient magnetic equator and the Ark of the Covenant.
So this sort of looks familiar. This is from Walter Russell, The Secret of Light. And he says, all things stimulate light. So, we talked about everything emanating from the heart yesterday or in the last episode. And he says, in this universe, the octaves of the elements of matter grow from seed, just as all things grow from seed. Elements are not fixed created things. They are pressure conditions of light waves. The inert gases are the cosmic seeds of matter in this universe. They surround the zero from which motion springs and to which it returns. They are the seeds of the octaves of matter, and each octave has a different seed, just as different trees have different seeds. The inert gases are the recorders in cosmic seed of this creating universe of infinite continuity. All matter in this universe is but differently conditioned motion stimulating light, and all differences in condition are pressure differences. And I bring these up, over and over again to give you this image, so that you can envision this breath, and where we're taking it now is how that is the essence of the moment of creation of our perception of reality, as beings living on this sphere that we call Earth. And so with what I just read, you can see here is the seed, or the egg, if you will, creating the cosmic serpent, which is the sine wave, right? Currency itself, frequency. And we've said it before, that Nikola Tesla told us, if you want to know or find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's it. That is the foundation of our perception of reality. And this image in the lower left-hand corner is basically Ra riding the current, right? A breath of watery, wavy light. We say we want to become light beings. We want to go back to our heart, back to our center. And so I bring in this imagery that, a lot of us are familiar with, the staff of Moses, right? And, when that staff, becomes a serpent, it is stagnant waveform becoming the frequency of the physical energetic construct, the sine wave, if you will, or the sin wave, according to the Bible, the the ups and downs, the knowledge of good and evil, the sine wave that creates the matrix, the formula of this illusion. When it becomes flat, the illusion of polarity fades, and we begin the process back to gnosis. It's really that simple. I love how, the symbolism of this staff and the serpent, migrates through time, and it becomes the dollar symbol.
Yeah.
It's currency, right? That's what money is.
Indeed.
And of course, the caduceus, there's a story of the bronze serpent of Moses, which is also known as the caduceus, or the rod of Asclepius. And it's basically, again, the cosmic serpent. It's DNA. It's the basis, or basic foundational pattern of life on Earth. And Moses threw his staff on the ground, and it turned into a snake. When commanded to pick it up, it straightened out into a staff. On Earth, all is this, as I keep saying, foundational waveform. Just trying to drive the point home, because when we talk about the ancient magnetic equator, we're talking about waveform, right? Currency as the basis. And so we looked at some of these images before, several episodes back. I reintroduced, and I promised you I would, because you can't drive these points home enough, that some of the symbolism, like the mer. The mer itself, look at the shape. It's a plow, but it looks like an A. It's the alpha, right? It's incredible, right?
And the beginning.
Yes, and it means love. And Mary means the beloved. And I'm going to take it further, and I have this beautiful picture of Mary Magdalene. And what is Mary Magdalene, if you break it down, but it's the beloved magnetic line
Hmm.
currency, right? So when we start getting into the Ark of the Covenant, this is going to become the Ark of the Covenant and the ancient magnetic equator. This is going to become very important. It all begins on the Giza Plateau.
And what do they
So
say of Mary Magdalene? That she was a whore?
yes,
HOR?
I actually have an article on the Horus Rising website. What is it called? It's about the whore as Horus, the seed, or the whore of Hathor, as this original whore, the scarlet letter. This is the scarlet letter, right? And it means love, and it's a tool for opening the flow, right? Opening a path for the flow of water, irrigation, right? For currency. And they considered this love, which is amazing because it's life. You're opening a path for water to flow. You're unblocking a blockage and opening this path for the flow, and that's life force. And they define that as love. How amazing. Forces of nature. And then the Mary, the Mary being, a name that we are so familiar with in the Bible as the beloved, but also in ancient Egypt. We had Meritatan, which we'll talk about, and we had Mariat Amun, and we have so many, and they just discovered a tomb with the name Mary, and he was the keeper of secrets. Just so much interesting knowing when you start to understand and unravel these clues.
And of
And
course,
so,
Mer
yes,
is also the sea,
it's the sea, exactly.
currency again.
We've talked about this. Look at even the story of Merlin, right?
Merlin, sure.
Merlin the magician. He could harness the currency, of course, move between the worlds. And it's a tool literally to open the path for the flow, the flowering of life. So yeah, incredible use of something they used in everyday life, but they make powerful usage of it in symbolism. And this is what the ancient Egyptians were so adept at. And so I say, beloved meridian, the word meridian itself has mer in it. And the mer is also related to electromagnetism as the vital force of the universe. Our word meridian stems from this root and can also refer to the geomagnetic ley, dragon, or song lines that form the electromagnetic flow of fertile energy that nurtures our planet. The Mary of any given tribe, and this is ancient tribes in this area, in Egypt and surrounding areas, the ancient Mary would have been considered the wisdom keeper or elder, the knowledge holder. And according to Gerald Massey, Mary is also one of the names of Nut, which is again that primordial sea, as Alan just said, as you just said, Alan. It's also known as seas. Like in France, they call the mer is always the sea, and in different areas in the world. So yes, it's all about the water, the feminine life force. And we've seen this image before. We have the 8 Agad inside this sphere, and they're holding mares, right? They're opening a path for the flowering of life, first life. And the two female netters are literally dumping the two waters that create, this perception of our reality as this great watery illusion, right? And you could even liken it to the Taurus field, emanating from the Akhet of the first rising of the sun. So yeah, powerful symbolism. So were we once all mermaids and mermen, able to navigate the currents? And I would say absolutely. And some of the senses that we have lost and forgot we once had, but I believe they're awakening within us now. We're beginning to feel the energy and learning how to navigate and swim, if you will, through its patterns. And so we've seen part of this slide before as well. Anubis was known as foremost of the Westerners. And this is why, we say the Sphinx is probably never Anubis or never a jackal, because the jackal always faces west. And he's here on the image here, the black and white image line drawing of the Dendera zodiac, located in the Temple of Hathor. You see that out of the center of this zodiac, showing the cycles of, I would say, it's the cycles. You're seeing the path of the sun on the ecliptic of a year, but it also is showing the great year, and it begins in the age of Cancer, and it begins with Anubis, and he's emerging from the belly of Ephet, or Taret, who is, as we've mentioned before, she is related to the Big Dipper with Draco on her back, right? So it's some people say she's Draco, some people say she is the Big Dipper. Some people say the plow is the Big Dipper that is emerging from her belly, but it's Anubis, and he's riding the mare and creating or embalming us in this electromagnetic spin, if you will, because every figure here is spiraling from center. It's all about the spin. And so I say the perception of time and space begins in the age of Cancer. This is a calendar of sorts, and it begins. We don't need to measure time and space until the first breath. And it all emerges from the center, as we just talked about. So it is basically the seed that we just talked about as well, emerging. He's the alpha dog that emerges to create our perception of reality. And this particular shape becomes the Greek alpha and the Roman A. You can see how it migrates from, the head of an Apis bull into what we know of today as the letter A. So you could almost perceive all of the tones that we use, all of the letters of the alphabet emerging and going around this circle that is the Dendera zodiac. And all this happens when? At Zep Tepi, the first time. And so, as I said, he's the sacred embalmer. He was known as Amp or Anpu. The verb amp means to wrap around, connected with Anubis's role as the sacred embalmer. So he's the embalmer. He's embalming us in electromagnetic energy. That is the veil that covers us. We fall into form, or perception of the illusion of form. Henny is a jackal-headed god who guarded the river of life. He's as a form of Anubis. This is from Budge again. So the river of fire, electromagnetic energy. So Zep means time, Tepi means first, and together they are the first time, or the golden age of alchemy, where the gods moved through the void and created the grids of our reality. Tepi means the foremost point of the bows of a ship, right? The hindmost part of the stern. Interesting. So all waveform spins. It can't be any other way. And so we see these symbols that, a lot of us are quite familiar with. Some people see it as a negative symbol, thanks to Hitler. But in truth, it's a very sacred symbol that we find all over the world in ancient symbolism. And we see it both as a counterclockwise, a negative spin, and as a clockwise or positive spin. And so many have pointed out that if you look at the circumpolar stars, you see that the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper together form, as we look at them as through the hours of the night in the sky, they actually form this fitting swastika, the label that we've come to give this form. And you can see there, it actually says Ra, the sun god, on his journey down the Milky Way. And it's showing you the two, the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper and Draco. Actually, that when Thuban was the pole star. And of course, today we are at the bottom. We are the bottom star of the Little Dipper. The very end of the handle is Polaris, our pole star. So directional spin determines whether one side of a magnet will attract another. Opposite vortex spins attract. Like spins repel. What we perceive as north and south poles are actually clockwise and counterclockwise vortex spins emitted by the magnet, and they create force fields. Here, I mentioned that you can find this all over the world, and you can see the different countries here and the different forms of this symbol that's really speaking to the spin. You know, this is how we view our reality, and how they viewed our reality through this the spinning of the circumpolar stars, and it's incredibly important. And so I've shown this before, but again, this is the game board, right? It's called Mehen, and Mehen is the snake, right? So he's actually, you know, he's that spiraling form into center. And the game pieces were lions, and this is really important because we're talking about watery waveform. The image that you're looking at in the middle of the image, you can see it more clearly at the top, is basically, if you put the top and the sphere together, you're looking at a symbol for a container of water, watery waveform that is the illusion of this reality, perception of reality. And so here you can actually see, I took these pictures. This is the picture on the right in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, and you can see this is a typical game board. The image we saw previously, I found in an old tomb at Saqqara, one of the Old Kingdom tombs, and it wasn't even cleaned out or restored yet, but we got a chance to go in and look several years ago, and when I saw the image, it just blew me away, and I knew it was significant and important. And you know, I discovered it was known to be this Mehen game, you know, the game of life, basically the breath in and out, and how fascinating that the game pieces are, these lions, reclining lions, if you will. And so I found this image, and I loved the phrase that came with it. It says, "From the unreal, lead me to the real. From the darkness, lead me to the light. From death, lead me to immortality." The eternal cycling of consciousness through its perceptions of itself. Every step on the game board gives us a different perception of reality as consciousness evolves and devolves, or you could say involves back to center. And the figure in the center is blowing a horn. It's sort of like, you know, sound initiates the beginning of not only the spin, but the breath, the sine wave itself. We've said that so many times. And this is also from Walter Russell, and yes, I am a big fan. The periodic spiral of elements, that everything emanates from a hydrogen H, right in the center. And he said, you know, they're all electromagnetic and can be measured by the pressure of their life force on magnetism, you know, and they spiral out in a Fibonacci spiral. How amazing is that? Incredible. So it's a story told by the stars, and it's all about the spin. What's interesting is, and we've talked about this before, but you need to keep bringing this up. It's the Big Dipper becomes the energetic imprint for their opening of the mouth tool. So to restore life to an inert body, they use this tool to activate the life force. Fascinating, right? So yeah, there is a story about a sacred book compiled by the god Thoth or Jehuti in Edfu, in which certain sacred mounds are located along the Nile, on which the key temples of this town will be built. It was 7 wise men or companions of Horus who fixed these locations at the beginning of the world or the first time. Of course, these 7 wise men are the 7 stars of the Big Dipper. In Babylon, they were recognized as Apkallu, and it was believed that they lived before the flood. The Vedas also speak of the 7 rishis, or sages, who survived the flood and were commissioned to transmit the wisdom of the ancient world to humanity. I know they call the sages, or the watchers, the 7 Hathors were known to be the watchers, or those that could tell the future of any child at birth. But these 7 sages can also represent something else, which I'm going to introduce in a moment. But what's fascinating here, this is also from Edfu, and this is a great image on the wall. I've shown it before, where Sachet lays the foundational lines at the first time using the guidance of Meshkenu, and that is the Big Dipper. So we see this imagery in different forms at all of the temples, and she is aligning all of the temples with the stretching of the cord ceremony, symbolically to the Big Dipper, or in some way aligning it, utilizing the Big Dipper. So this is really, really, again, important. And as Walter Russell says, all matter, whether of Earth, suns, or corpuscles, it's formed between the opposite poles of 2 magnets. So again, I need to point these things out so that you have a better understanding of the things we're about to present and talk about. So again, we've shown this image many times, and it's basically as the heavens above the Milky Way, and you see Geb at the bottom as the sine wave form of Earth. He's shaped in a sine wave pattern, and then the figure in the center is Shu. He is air, he's wind, he's the solar wind, even, if you will. But he is, in this position, he is part of the Earth's atmosphere, and he's in the Ka position, holding up Nut. And so Ka is, again, the life force, the activating force of nature. And what you don't see is his twin sister, Shu, who is the unseen force of nature. Together they are electromagnetism. He is electric, she is the magnetic, the feminine magnetism. And together they are the breath of Ra. And also the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water, is what we're looking at. So yeah, and they create this atmosphere. Everything takes place in this area between heaven and earth. So they were also known to be Gemini. The image in the center is the picture we see on the ceiling of Dendera that shows a Shu and Tefnut. And what's interesting, if you look at their hands, they're actually forming the bottom of a sine wave, and their hands aren't quite touching, which again is very interesting, and speaks to charge. But together they make up atmosphere, wind and moisture, El being masculine, electricity, Ma, magnetism, feminine, electromagnetism, currency itself. And so the images on the far left are of Tefnut, and we see her. We talked about this in an earlier episode. We see these images, and in between her paws, you see a spout coming out where water would have flown out from the ceiling of the temple. And I've shown people that that when you, on the other side of Tefnut, of this spout, you see what looks to be a false door. And at the bottom, you see an opening in the floor where the spout would be, where the water would come out. So it's moving, symbolically, the water, the sacred water, which was probably used to purify the statue of the netter, right, of Hathor herself. This this water for the purification that has touched the netter, or the god herself, goddess, is coming through the interdimensional doorway from heaven to earth through the spout. And I'm sure they had basins at the bottom on the outside of the temple that was collecting this sacred holy water, if you will, to maybe be used in ceremony or for healing. So, and we see these images worldwide. The total upper left-hand picture is from the Chalice Well at Glastonbury, the iron water. And we've talked about feline. This is feline energy, and the Phi, Fe, is the iron. So the water coming out of the lion head at Chalice Well is coming from the Glastonbury tour, and it's the iron-rich water. So yes, when I go there, I've been there several times, and I just can't wait to put my my mug or my water bottle underneath and drink this this water that contains life force, iron-rich water.
I wouldn't do that.
Are you kidding?
No, I wouldn't.
Everybody does.
I won't drink raw water.
Oh, it's been cleaned through the earth. It's literally coming out of the earth. But anyway, I do.
We'll agree to disagree. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, we will agree. But anyway, yes, it's what I'm really pointing out is what she represents, and she is, in my opinion, the Sphinx. And up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that the hieroglyph for L is the lion form, and it can just be the front part of the lion with the two paws out, and it's very, very ancient. We see imagery of the lion glyphs going back to the early dynastic periods, first, second dynasty. So in the beginning, I have this quote from Laird Scranton that he posted on social media, and it really struck me as explaining this beautifully. And he says, the starting point is vibration inherent between the magnetism and electricity. For me, that oscillation is the root metronome of time, and the complex interaction of the two energies themselves enfold the potential for consciousness. Renee Gunanan, I have to have that right, speaking from the perspective of Hinduism, ultimately understands those two energies as manifested forms. Oneness, by definition, enfolds all unmanifested potentials. So basically saying what we've been talking about from the beginning here. So that one breath creates this entire electromagnetic spectrum of how we perceive the universe. So we talked a little bit about the ecliptic pole, and I wanted to give you a picture of the circumpolar stars and where exactly this pole exists. And it is, as you can see, in the center of the Draco constellation. And around this, you see the pole stars. And this is basically, this is the circle of perception. As the Earth is tilted, it points toward different spots. It sort of spirals around this circle, giving us different perceptions of reality based on the angle of the sun hitting the Earth and how the electromagnetic field transforms and changes as the Earth tilts. This gives you a better image of what I'm talking about. And so we fall out of balance. The tilt of the Earth's axis or jet pillar causes the four seasons and the day and night cycles. As the Earth spins on its axis, producing day and night, or night and day, it also moves about the sun in an elliptical, elongated circle orbit that requires about 365.25 days to complete. After a period of terrible chaos and cataclysmic events and a moment of silence, the pause, the survivors would have imagined the rebirth of their new world in the new and spiraling movement of the sun, moon, and stars around a fixed point in the heavens. This breath of new life would need to be traced within their structures to define their new vision of time and space. The Egyptians celebrated the raising of the jet pillar annually, illustrating the cyclical nature of this process. So it's coming to center and then falling again in cyclical periods of time, and I would say every 12,000 years, give or take, depending on where we're at within the galaxy and the breath of life from the center of the galaxy. And these are all things.
When we come back to center, which star are we then pointing to?
The ecliptic pole. This is why it's so significant. We're not, everybody thinks we're just doing a linear line around the circumpolar spins, and I'm glad you asked that. And I was getting that. Everybody thinks it's just going to be a linear circle, and we just keep spinning the axis, but nothing is linear, right? So when they're lifting the jet, they're lifting us to center, and it's the center of the ecliptic, right?
Mm.
It's not where we think our center is. You know, we look at a pole star, but when we're falling off our axis at 23.5 degrees, we're pointing toward one of those, you know, pole
One,
stars, or
one of those stars in the circle that you showed.
in the circle, right? But we're never at our center, right? We're always around 25.3 degrees off center. Well, if we're centering, and all of the symbolism worldwide says we do. I mean, remember all the pillars I showed you and
Hmm.
showed you in some of the earlier episodes? They're everywhere in the world. That the straight perpendicular pillar, this is what Horus is on. Well, that
Right.
means we come to center regularly through the cycles of time and space. And that's the piece of the puzzle that everybody is missing. And then the ancients, when they determined who God was, it wasn't the pole star, it was the ecliptic pole. That's the center of the spin, the circumpolar spin. That's when we're completely erect and there's no time and space, the pause. And then it
Okay.
falls again and we begin the perception again.
I know where you're going with this. I don't want to spoil it, but
Oh, please. A little tease is fine.
well, you're talking about Bess.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is where I'm going very quickly. So it's hard to understand if you're not familiar with everything that we're introducing here. We did talk about that this ecliptic pole was the Cat's Eye Nebula, the
Hmm.
eye in the sky, right? The eye of Ra watching down on us. Maybe it's the great central sun.
Hmm.
But that also is a metaphor for our center, even the center of the galaxy and the center of the universe. You know, when we talk about centering, you know, there's this is a fractal perception of reality. We can center ourselves in any given moment by transmuting our polarity. The Earth can center itself by pointing to the ecliptic pole. The galaxy, you know, the solar system can center itself. The galaxy can center itself. So it's cycles within cycles within cycles, or perceptions of the same formula. But this gives you a nice image of the dark ellipse at the top is actually showing you the circle, the circle that we just showed you, the flat circle. This is actually showing you the circumpolar stars. Draco is in the center, and Earth you can see is off its axis here. Hopefully that helps.
Hmm.
And you can see the 23.5 degree angles on either side. Right? If
Well,
we're
you can
pointing
see
to
how
the data,
we're pointing to Polaris, and
right.
23.5 degrees to the other way, we would be pointing to the star Vega.
Exactly. And if we just did a linear circle around, we would never be centered. But what happens if we at one time were centered? The Dendera zodiac is an exact 360 days. We had a 360-day calendar, right? And then suddenly we add 5 more days. I'm going to illustrate that in a moment. So if we had 360 days, that means we were pointing toward the center of Draco, the Cat's Eye Nebula, the ecliptic pole. So the Earth's axis of rotation changes in a movement, as we know, as the cycle of precession. There's no, you know, just drive the point home here, causing the North Pole to draw a circle whose center lies in the center of Draco. It moves 1 degree every 72 years and 30 degrees every 2,160 years, which equals an age. This is one of the ages that we talk about. And we're currently in the age of Pisces, and they say precessing, or some people say we've already entered the age of Aquarius, but it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that gradually happens for a full cycle of precession at about 26,000 years, which Alan, you mentioned in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the great year, and as I'm trying to point out, it's hugely important, because as we process around this great year, it is this huge breath of life that we're playing out with this evolution and devolution of conscious awareness. So here's Bess. And so here we have Bess, and I am pointing out or projecting here are, in my opinion, best is this centering. He is the ecliptic pole. This is what he represents. And what you find around these two images, I'm pointing out the Ouroboros. As on the right side, you can see there is a serpent that encloses the entire image. It's a sort of like a stela here. And it's called Sippus of Horus. And as you can see, Horus is transmuting his polarity here. He's not killing the beasts, he's transmuting them, right? So he's standing erect on crocodiles, and crocodiles represent digestion. So when you transmute your polarity, you digest the material or the physical perception of reality to raise your level of awareness. And you see the image of Bes above him, right under the winged sun disk, which represents what? Un, the moment of silence.
Right, like a face of a bearded man just below the sun disk.
That's Bes. So this is so hugely important. He represents so many things, and I'm going to do a whole thing on Bes because his symbolism is worldwide, and it's huge.
Bigger than people realize, I mean.
I know, and I keep promising this, but I have to keep introducing him because he plays such a big part. And so, yeah, and this is where it all begins. And that's, this is the story of the Ouroboros as well. And you can see here, it's a dragon eating his tail. And I think it's relating here to Draco himself, or the constellation Draco. I've personified him. On the other side, we also see an Ouroboros in the statue. Small bronze statue, and it's the serpent that totally encircles Bes's feet. I mean, he's also riding serpents because he, once the breath happens, he is in a state of movement again, but he is in the center of the Ouroboros on a birthing box.
Yeah.
Small one, tiny one, but you can see he has four faces as well. He looks in the four directions. And
it's reminiscent of Cambodia as well.
Well, exactly. Hugely reminiscent of Cambodia. So yeah, it falls nearly exactly in the direction of the North Ecliptic Pole, perpendicular to the plane of the solar system. The Vedic texts tell us that the spine is considered the axis of the universe. So yeah.
And what other bearded man lives in the North Pole?
Well, and I do, and I was about to say that I do feature that when we do an episode all about this. Of course, he's Santa Claus. We think we put Santa Claus in the North Pole, but he's actually the ecliptic pole, and he's judging whether we're naughty or nice, right?
Yeah.
It's so incredibly. It's like right before our eyes, and we haven't seen it. Because they say North Pole and we picture the Earth's North Pole, and that's why I say we make these mistakes, or maybe the mistakes were made for us, and to somehow veil this truth that about the fact that we do center ourselves, and people would say, oh my gosh, if the Earth did that, that everything on Earth would die and the seasons would stop and all, Well, that's the point. Everything stops. It's perception. Everything is this illusion of a material world, a physical world. And it's only a perception. It's a game board. So what happens if the game stops for a moment? We have a moment of complete enlightenment, that aha moment, that near-death experience. And then boom, we fall into form again, right? 23.5 degrees all over again.
And how long does that moment of silence last? We have no idea. Does it last a fraction of a second? Does it last for millions of years?
No time and space.
Exactly.
This is the thing. Our perception of time and space only happens because we're off our axis. We all chose to hop on board, right? Hop on a bark and take off on the hero's journey. It's a sine wave pattern, right? This is what the ancients tell us worldwide. And this is why I'm saying we have been so entrained and programmed to believe that, the physical universe is real. when it's only an illusion. It's a game board for us to find our way back to center. Wow. Here we go again. Beautiful.
Mm.
We've shown you the Aztec calendar with Bess in the center.
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, I said Aztec calendar, right? And it's, again, it's this centering. He is in the center. And the two currents at the bottom, you can see the currents from the top. The tails come down, and the two faces of the serpents, the dragons, whatever you want to call them, come together to form the face of Bess at the center. Yin and yang, dual opposing currents, creating our calendar, our perception of reality.
Why is he pictured with his tongue sticking out?
I'm going to have that coming up.
Okay.
It's really important. It's in this episode also. It's really important. Now, some people would say the tongue sticking out because he is the beginning and end, right? So at the end, what happens when you see a dead body? The tongue's hanging out, right? In our cartoons. But in the beginning, he's actually, it's like everything's exploding from the mouth, right?
Okay. It's the opening of the mouth. That's how you.
Exactly.
That's how you depict in stone that sound is coming out of the mouth.
Exactly. And then the Egyptian statue on the right of Bess, he has the same ears as Hathor and the same crown, and this represents sound because resonant sound brings you back to center, and dissonant sound takes you back into
just chaos. Like we saw with the Hathor sistrums, the rattles.
Exactly. And do you see the lion, the leopard skin coming right out from under his chin? Mm-hmm. So he is the one who can feel the currents. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The feline energy. And I love this image. I took this at the Mamisi, the birthing chamber. It's the Ptolemaic birthing chamber at Dendera, Temple of Hathor. It's on the ceiling, it's not on the ceiling, it's on the wall up at the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And it's imagery of Bess and Hathor. But if you notice, Hathor is in the center, and she's what gives birth to our perception of reality, right? And we've shown this in several episodes. But you see on either side of her, there's the cobras facing away from her, right? Mm-hmm. She's creating our perception of reality. So it's separation is creation. And so the cobras have the red and the white crown, right? Upper and Lower Egypt. So it's the division. And if you look at the best characters, the same cobras now are facing inward, right? So it's like birth and death, birth and death of our perception of reality. Of a physical reality. So the circle of pole stars, here's a beautiful, with the imagery, it shows you that, these 7 pole stars, I am suggesting could very well be the watchers, the seers. They are the, almost like the 7 chakras of our perception of reality. So depending on where you're at, Polaris being sort of like our root chakra, where, mm-hmm. It's our lowest, it's our most densest perception of reality, our heaviest, when time and space are and it's, we're in our lowest form of separation consciousness. And then our highest form, would be Vega, which is directly across from us, where our perception of reality is, our highest stage of awareness. And the 7 comes to play. This is in the upper right-hand corner, an image of Sachet, and she's wearing what many people want to believe is a marijuana plant, marijuana leaf, but it's known to be a star, or, she is mathematics. She is the great grand architect of the universe, right? Of our perception of reality. Here she has a tool, she's marking time and space. And she's responsible for the creation of our perception of this physical reality. And I believe the seven represents, we did a whole segment on just the seven and
Hmm.
the powerful, the seven tones, the seven chakras, all, giving us the seven spheres, seven tones. It's really the seven qualities of our perception of a physical reality.
Right, 7 colors, 7,
Yeah, yeah,
on and
exactly.
on. Everything is 7.
So finally, we're going to talk about the ancient magnetic equator in
Mm.
Ma'at, when we were in perfect balance, when we were pointed at the ecliptic pole, and suddenly we begin to, creation begins. And this first breath is this beautiful line, sine wave pattern across our perception of the earth, and it's perfectly balanced, right? And we've talked about all of the sites that were built or have been built, because this is an energetic pattern. This is one of the most powerful lines on the planet. And it goes right through Giza, the Giza Plateau. It goes through Petra, Mohenjo-Daro, Angkor Wat, Easter Island, the Nazca, where the Nazca lines are. Just so many really powerful places on the planet. And it also was in alignment with the path of the sun on the ecliptic, which you can see here. And it's that first breath when we're born into duality, and it typifies our hero's journey. And it's the hero's journey that we see at the Temple of Dendera. It's, with Osiris taking off as the Fool in the tarot deck, and the tarot deck itself represents this sine wave pattern, sine wave, as our journey of perception. It's the path of Ra on the ecliptic. This beautiful image on the right is showing, Ra on his bark, and there's Set, and the serpent is Apep, or Apophis, as the Greeks called him. And it's the sine wave currency, right? It's the path of the sun on the ecliptic, the daily journey of the sun. The rays of the light that mark this sun or sine wave path around the sphere of our Earth are contained between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. This is important, as fallen angles generating a waveform dividing our day and night cycles. Here's Apep, or I like to say a pop, born from the womb of Ninth, right? The womb as a pulsing, vibrating electromagnetic current. He's known as he who was spat out, right? First breath. Two hemispheres of the brain and of the earth. Fractal imprint of our perception of reality. Easter Island, here we go, Nazca drawings, Angkor Wat, Mohenjo-Daro, Petra, Siwa, the Sphinx, to name a few.
And imagine what hasn't been found underneath the Sahara,
Yep.
underneath all the growth in the Amazon. There could be
So many, yes. Yeah, truly. Here is this image of the magnetic equator on the brain, if you will, connecting the two hemispheres, the left and right focus of the brain, and the goal would have been to transmute them both, right? That is when we are centered and are in perfect balance, just like when the earth was in perfect balance before we fall from grace. And this is actually an image I took in Urfa when we went to Göbekli Tepe. It's a skull with the same image on it, basically a very similar image of a serpent connecting the two hemispheres of the brain.
And there we have it.
And there we have it. No, wait, there's more. Have to tune into the next one.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks everybody for watching. And our website is horusrising.com. We will be back again with another episode very soon. And please like, share, and subscribe.